we are in this community, in this center, that where we come together each week and in classes and in our lives to learn more about how we can be more free in the world. And we've been doing that through our series based on the book, The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And I've been reading this little quote by him. He says, "Come from a space of peace and you'll find that you can deal with anything." Isn't that the truth? When we get to that place of peace, we can deal with whatever is happening in our lives because we have that foundation, that rock within us. So we are in the 4th week of our series. And for those of you who are in classes, which are now closed, by the way, they've been studying this study guide, which you can pick up in the foyer. And it goes through the chapters. And there's discussion questions in there. And you can use that as you read along. And you also got affirmation cards. And there's a poster out there that you can get one of these and put affirmation cards on it so that at the end of 7 weeks, you'll have all those cards. And I know we've run out of certainly week 1 and most of week 2, and I've actually ordered some more of those. So if you are wanting that, they should be here next week. And as we move along in our series, most weeks we've been playing a video of what unity means to one of our community members. And this week we're going to hear a short video, actually, from our Ken Capozzi. So here's Ken.
My name is now Ken Capozzi, because I was recently married. I have lived in Stuart for 6 years, and I've been coming to Unity of Stuart for 5 years. Unity of Stuart means a great deal to me in the fact that this is my grounding rock. This is the place that I regenerate. I get rid of the baggage 1 day a week, and it has taught me, the one thing that it's taught me is to breathe, and no matter what happens or what I do, it is. So it is, and it's all fine, and it's all right, because that's what I'm meant to do and meant to be. And that's what Unity has helped me to realize. There is no rights or wrongs. There's just being one with yourself and with nature.
Is there anything else, Ken, that you'd like anybody who may be thinking about coming to Unity, what you'd like them to know?
Just that everything is okay with who you are or what you are. It's accepting. There is no right or wrong, and there is no pressure because I was raised a Catholic, and the guilt is out the door. So it's a loving environment. That's basically why I'm here.
You know, I was raised Catholic too, and I always, I used to say that I was a recovering Catholic, and so what I know now to be true is that whatever tradition that we're raised in, it served us in some way, right? And Catholicism and Episcopalianism and Judaism and all those other isms, they serve the world in a lot of wonderful ways. So even though for some of us we've stepped out or away from our embedded theology, let's just know that they serve the world in many ways, even though they're not serving us in the same way. So I just want to say that about other traditions. All right. So just to recap, for those of you who haven't been here for these past weeks, week 1, we talked about our inner roommate. We've been talking about our inner roommate every week since then. That's the chattering voice that never shuts up, right? That continuous internal dialogue. And our homework was to watch and to listen to that internal dialogue and just to notice what it said, not to do anything about it, not to beat ourselves up about it, but just to notice what was happening. And then, and activate the witness, the observer, because what we've been talking about, and we'll continue to talk about, is there is that inner roommate, there is that thinking mind, and then there's the witness, the observer, who is our true self, our real self. So when we activate the witness, which is constantly looking at what the thinking mind is doing, we can be more at peace, simply put. Then week 2, we talked about the energy of the heart. This is when I first did that meditation, which is actually called a coherence meditation, and that is from the people at heartmath.org. It's a whole organization about activating the energy of the heart to have more peace, more joy, and more love in our lives. So you might want to look that up. And so what happens is when we use our heart energy, we begin to clear out the blockages that we've been carrying around for a lot of our lives. And the heart is that place of power. And then last week, we looked at what it's like to embrace change, to not let change throw us off our center. And because we looked at using the disturbances that happen in our lives to be the catalyst for transformation. Not to try to push anything away, but to use it all, every bit of it, for our learning and growth. And this week we continue our series with the exploration of true freedom. So now you're caught up. And we have those talks are on our website. We have CDs that if you want to catch up, you can certainly do that. I'd like to share with you a story from the book Illusions by Richard Bach. Once there lived a village of creatures along the bottom of a great crystal river. The current of the river swept silently over them all, young and old, rich and poor, good and evil, the current going its own way, knowing only its own crystal self. Each creature in its own manner clung tightly to the twigs and rocks of the river bottom, for clinging was their way of life, and resisting the current, what each had learned from birth. But one creature said at last, I am tired of clinging. Though I cannot see it with my eyes, I trust that the current knows where it is going. I shall let go and let it take me where it will. Clinging, I shall die of boredom. The other creatures laughed and said, Fool, let go, and that current you worship will throw you tumbled and smashed across the rocks, and you will die quicker than boredom. But the one heeded them not, and taking a breath did let go, and at once was tumbled and smashed by the current across the rocks. Yet in time, as the creature refused to cling again, the current lifted him free from the bottom, and he was bruised and hurt no more. And the creatures downstream, to whom he was a stranger, cried, See, a miracle, a creature like ourselves, yet he flies. See the Messiah, come to save us all. And the one carried in the current said, I am no more Messiah than you. The river delights to lift us free, if only we dare let go. Our true work is this voyage, this adventure. Amen? I was having a conversation with someone this week in which she said to me, I've been doing this work, coming to church, I'm reading The Untethered Soul, and I'm still having trouble going to my heart. I'm still having trouble transcending all this stuff that's going on in my life, right? And so that might be true for you. It's certainly true for me sometimes, that these teachings that we experience together, they all sound really good, don't they? They all sound really wonderful. And yet, we continually, I'm going to just lump us all into this, we continually miss the mark, right? We hear these words, we hear these teachings, we hear these truths, and we say, and I'll speak for myself here, I say, okay, I'm going to do this in every moment of my life. In every moment of my life, I'm going to go to my heart, and I'm going to rise above. And then something happens, and I don't rise above. And I don't go to my heart, right? And I start with the shoulds. Remember, in the first week, we talked about if only they would do this. They should do that. If they would do this, I would be okay. Right? And that's what happens in our lives. And I bring this up because our purpose here is not to become the Messiah. Right? It is, but that's the larger purpose in our lives, right? We are each the Messiah. But we are each also human. And so what my call for us is to constantly remember, to continuously remember that as we do this work together, we will fall short. And if we are intentional, and if we are consistent, and if we have courage to continue trying these spiritual tools in our lives, we will rise up a little bit further than we did the last time we were triggered. Right? We will remember what we are made of more than the last time we had a challenge in our lives. So it's incremental. At least it's been incremental in my life. Maybe it's been a little bit more miracle-like in your life, But for me, it's really been doing the work step after step, day after day, teaching after teaching, and being open and receptive to having Spirit work through me. Yes, can you agree with that? So none of this is about beating ourselves up because we're not. It's about celebrating because of the steps that we're making and using our spiritual tools. Right? And that's how we come to freedom in our lives. By recognizing that and by not defining ourselves by where we have fallen back, but about defining ourselves and where we've taken a step forward. Freedom. In the dictionary, freedom is the power or right to act, speak, or think as one wants without hindrance or restraint. The state of not being imprisoned or enslaved. Right? Using those definitions, I imagine everyone here would say that you are free, right? You can say whatever you like. Nobody is imprisoning you or enslaving you. But are we really free inside? Are we really free to speak whatever is on our hearts? Some of us maybe yes, some of us maybe no. Because in my life, and maybe in your life too, there are these invisible bars that we erect, right? There are these invisible bars, whether they're emotional or mental, whatever they are, that we use to keep something hidden, to try to keep something safe. So we're talking today about what liberation from that looks like. What does liberation from a stressful or painful or fearful existence look like? Because what happens is, when we're loaded down with all those things that we're carrying around, we're not free. Those things that we're carrying around become the filter through which we live. They're the filter through which we react, right? All of those things that we're carrying around. So it behooves us to uncover those things, to shine the light on them, to breathe through them, and to release them so that we can be truly free. Because who wants to suffer? Right? The Buddha said that life is suffering. And this is what he's talking about, or he talked about when he said that life is suffering. It's what we tell ourselves about our life, what we listen to in our minds about our life that brings us the suffering. Singer says, people do not realize how much they are suffering because it seems so normal. Because it seems so normal. Right? Many of us live lives of low-level, under-the-radar stress. Right? It's the internal experience, this internal experience of suffering that we think is normal. For some of us, perhaps most of us, it's the ocean we swim in every day, the soundtrack of our lives. Singer says he has the key to true freedom. You want to hear what it is? One person does. I think it was Don who wants to hear. All right, Don. This is for you then. Decide to stop suffering. Okay, everybody can go home. Right? Decide to stop suffering. Seems very simple. It is very simple. But before we can decide to stop suffering, we have to become aware of this low-level stress in our lives, right? We have to become aware of this normal that we're experiencing, right? So that we can know what our intention needs to be to move away from that low-level stress or that low-level suffering. So, here's a question. Is your typical state joy and enthusiasm? For some of us, maybe yes. For some of us, maybe no. Are you enjoying your life on a daily basis? So, to decide to stop suffering is to become aware that maybe there could be an upliftment in your daily joy, to make a decision to count blessings, to be aware of the good things that are happening in our lives. And realize that if your typical state is not joy, to be open to maybe there could be a change in your life. Then maybe there's something to look at. Last week I spoke about Singer's illustration about the thorn in the arm. Some of you might remember that. And it was a great illustration about, what he said was if we have a thorn in our arm, we have a couple of options, right? We can pull out the thorn and heal and be done. Or we can leave the thorn in and then try to arrange our world so that thorn doesn't get touched, right? So we can, when we sleep or when we hug or whatever it is, we're wrapping that thorn and trying to keep it safe. And so that's what we are like, Singer says, in our internal life, right? When there's something he calls a pain point, I think he calls it a pain point, or maybe that's just me, a point of pain in our lives, we don't want to shine the light on it. We don't want to get out the magnifying glass and the light and the tweezers and excavate it. We want to keep it buffered, right? And that's what stops us from true freedom. Can you imagine what it would be like, how much more peace you would have if you could take out those inner thorns, if you could shine the light on them and let them go, and how much more freedom you would experience. I'm going to read to you from the book. He says, just stop for a moment and see what you have given your mind to do. You said to your mind, I want everyone to like me. I don't want anyone to speak badly of me. I want everything I say and do to be acceptable and pleasing to everyone. I don't want anyone to hurt me. I don't want anything to happen that I don't like. And I want everything to happen that I do like. Then you said, now, mind, figure it out. Figure out how to make every one of these things a reality, even if you have to think about it day and night. And of course, your mind says, I'm on the job. I will work on it constantly. Can you imagine somebody trying to do that? The mind has to try to make it so that everything you say is said the right way, taken the right way, and has the right effect on everybody. It has to make sure that everything you do is interpreted and seen the right way, and that nobody does anything to hurt you. It has to make sure that you get everything you want, and that you don't ever get what you don't want. How hard are we working in our lives? How much does I do it. Do you do it? This is what we do. This is what we have trained our minds to do in our lives. This is our habit. We expect our minds to manipulate the world, right? Singer says that this kind of thinking is an addiction. And if we want to be free of these habits, we have to treat them as an addiction, right? He says, stop telling your mind that its job is to fix your personal problems. This job has broken the mind and disturbed the entire psyche. It has created fear, anxiety, and neurosis. Your mind has very little control over this world. He says, by watching your mind, you'll notice that it is engaged in the process of trying to make everything okay. If only I would have done that. If only I didn't do that. This is what I'm going to say next time. How did they talk to me about that? If they would just do this. It's the constant inner dialogue in our lives. He says, consciously remember that this is not what you want to do, and then gently disengage. Do not fight it. Never fight with your mind, just don't participate in it. When you see your mind telling you how to fix the world and everyone in it in order to suit yourself, just don't listen. So I've been working with that, as I do when I'm teaching. And I've been working with that when those kinds of things come up in my mind. My thinking mind says, well, how do you just turn that off? How do you turn off that voice that's constantly judging and trying to fix things, right? And so what I've simply done is that coherence where I go to my heart, right? And I breathe into my heart. And one of my spiritual teachers told me several years ago that when this happens for her, she just says, no, sweetie, don't go there. Be very gentle with yourself. No, sweetie, don't go there. Breathe through your heart. Generate gratitude. Generate positivity. It is seriously as simple as that. No matter how many times we need to do it, this is the way we do it. So the first step is to be quiet, to notice to become aware and let the real you come through. The witness, the observer, the one who sits in the center and the knows, right? That's the real you. And don't engage with that thinking you. No, sweetie, we're not going there. Right? We're not going there. We're going to breathe through our heart. Instead of contracting and closing, relax and release. This is what we are called to do. Can't emphasize enough how much the noticing. It doesn't happen unless we become aware that it's happening, right? So I want to insert here a story about our co-founder, Myrtle Fillmore. Many of you have heard this already. Myrtle and Charles Fillmore founded the Unity Movement, and the Unity Movement really was basically started because Myrtle had this healing. She had been a sickly child, had been told she was diagnosed with tuberculosis, and was told that she wouldn't live very long. And then she heard a spiritual teacher say, "I am a child of God and therefore do not inherit sickness." And this sparked her healing journey. And what she decided to do was to forgive herself for thinking that she was anything less than whole. She actually, we're told, and she's written, that she went into a closet for hours every day and blessed her body and said, "Forgive me for thinking, heart, that you were anything less than whole. Forgive me, arms, for thinking that you were anything less than healthy and whole." And went through this for months until she was totally healed and lived a long, fruitful life. This is what we're called to do, to not fall back on the script that we have brought with us since who knows when, right? The past stories we tell ourselves, the things that have happened in our lives, not to bring those into this present like they're gospel, right? To remember that God is bigger than this. To trust God instead of trusting that script that we've been living from most, if not all, of our lives. Trust the healing presence of God more than you trust these conditioned patterns of behavior. Again, the key is to become aware, to go to our heart, to let the oneness that we are be who we are. Singer says, right in the midst of your daily life, by untethering yourself from the bondage of your psyche, you actually have the ability to achieve freedom for your soul. This is true liberation. So what used to hold us down can now lift us up when we become aware. We become untethered. I want to end with the story of Moses and the Israelites. And I've told this story before, but I want to tell it again in this context because it's really powerful to illustrate our inner roommate. So you remember the story of Moses and the Israelites in the Red Sea, right? Moses had freed the Israelites from bondage in Egypt, and he's leading them to the promised land, the land of milk and honey. But instead of thinking about the Israelites behind Moses as just people, I invite you to think of yourself as Moses, and the Israelites are your inner roommate, your everyday neurotic thoughts. All right? So, Moses comes upon the Red Sea with water before him and the army behind him. Where's he going to go? So he's led the Israelites this far, and they're behind him, and what are they doing? Were they shouting, "Yay, Moses, go ahead, we believe in you. We know you can make it. We're so grateful that you brought us here"? No, that's not what they were saying. What they said to Moses was things like this: "Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us to die here? What have you done to us to bring us out of Egypt?" Now, keep in mind that the Israelites were slaves in Egypt. They had the worst possible existence, and now they're free. But just like our inner roommate, they're judging, they're complaining, right? They never cease their chattering. They say, "Is this not what we said to you in Egypt? Let us alone, and let us serve the Egyptians, for it will be much better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." In other words, our inner roommate will say, "I'm comfortable here. I know this place. I've been in this place for a long time. Why should I rise up? Why do you want me to go into this freedom? I'm happy here. I'm happy where I've been. Leave me alone. I don't want to go venture out into a new place. But Moses says to the people, fear not, stand firm and see the freedom you will experience. This is what Singer is calling us to do, to stand firm in our intention, in our courage, and in our self-compassion, to set an intention for freedom. Remembering that it's not a one-time thing, that we don't, again, I say this a lot, I'll say it again. I'm open to the lightning of God and the light of God to come down and blast everyone into spiritual freedom. I'm open to it. Hasn't happened in my life, right? So I set the intention to do it day by day, and we will fall back, and then we will go forward. It happens every moment of our existence. When you're in a problem, in a challenge, and your inner roommate gets really loud, no, sweetie, we're not going there. We're going to our heart, and we're generating a positive feeling, a positive thought, and we're going to let this pain rise up for healing. Moses, water in front, army behind, and yet he goes forward, even when there doesn't seem to be a way forward. And that's where we are sometimes. We're blinded by that inner voice. We're blinded by the pain. We're paralyzed by the pain we feel and the desire to have life be different. This is a lesson I have to be taught over and over again. The reason why we can't see is because we're allowing it. We have to activate our courage and be willing to feel that pain and move through it. And then God says to Moses, lift up your rod, stretch out your hand over the sea, and divide it that the people may go on dry land through the sea. And that's what we're called to do, to raise up our hand and say, through my indwelling divine nature, I can move through this. I can move through this. I can activate the real me and move through this and become untethered. Through the fear, through the inner pain, I know that I can do this because I know what I'm made of. I know I can rise above this. So today, I invite you to give yourself the gift of knowing your divinity. Give yourself the gift of knowing that you can move through anything that has been holding you back up until this moment, that you can rise above. That you can be the real you, that you can be free in the world as the real you. And we do have our affirmation cards, and I like to affirm them every week. And you don't need to pull yours out. And if you don't have one, you can pick one up on the way out and other ones from the prior weeks. And let's, as much as we can, feel this truth. I invite us to affirm together. I am free to be me. And let's take a breath. And affirm one more time together. I am free to be me, even if outer appearances say the opposite. From the core of your being, know that you can relax and release. Know that you can untether from your pain and live in true freedom. And I affirm this truth for each and every one of us.